Welcome to the Fish Nerds, the show about fish, fishing, and eating fish. I'm Clay Grove's Chief Executive Fish Nerd of the podcast, and I'm so glad you are listening. Before we get into today's content, I need a huge, solid favor from all of you listeners out there. Here's what you do. Go to podcastawards.com, and you're going to want to register for this site, email address, and you're in. And then I want you to go to the category called Sports and Recreation and nominate the Fish Nerds for a podcast awards. This is our chance to finally hit the big time and win thousands of dollars in cash and prizes. I don't think there's any money involved, but it would put us on the map and help us get some recognition. And if you like our show, nominate us. It'd be so cool to see a fishing podcast win instead of like a baseball or basketball or whatever foosball's out there. So go to podcastawards.com, nominate the Fish Nerds for the Sports and Recreation category, and if other podcasts you like are on there, nominate them too, and that's fine. But Fish Nerds, please, we need your help. podcastawards.com. All right, wow. So on today's show, we have Doc Martin and Fish Guy Josh. Doc Martin and Fish Guy Josh are two correspondents from the Fish Nerds podcast. Doc Martin is a fisheries biologist in Kansas, and Fish Guy Josh is a biologist out in California, and they have a brand new segment called Fish of the Day. Also on the show tonight, we're going to do some really cool fish in the news and learn all about a girl who was attacked by a giant fish. We're going to talk with the person who helped make that story happen. And we also have a great Stump the Fish Nerds. So stay tuned. Tonight's show is action-packed. All right. Well, first up is Doc Martin and Fish Guy Josh talking all about their fish of the day. If you like what they're doing, come over to Facebook to our group and tell them, hey, Fish Guy Josh, and hey, Doc Martin, I like what you're doing. If you don't like it, then, stop listening, I guess.
Hey, I need 2 seafood platters and a fish of the day.
A what?
A fish of the day!
Fish Nerds, I am back. After a long hiatus, I have jumped back into the segment producing game, and I have joined forces with none other than Doc Martin to bring back Fish of the Day. Dr. Martin, it is great to finally talk to you.
I think this is the first time that Doc Martin and Josh are having a conversation together, which is, I feel like, a big deal. This is an anniversary now.
Yeah. Worlds are colliding when Fish Guy Josh and Doc Martin finally get to touch base.
I think when we're both like super kind of sciencey nerds, right? So, I mean, we could be unstoppable at this point.
Yeah, I'm actually surprised this is the first time, given that we kind of have sort of similar backgrounds as far as what we do for work.
I agree, and I mean, hasn't the podcast been going for like 3 or 4 years now? I think.
Quite a long time, and you and I have never done anything more than questions back and forth on Facebook Messenger. That's about it.
We're stepping our game up here. We're gonna geek out.
But I feel like we're friends because I've listened to you on the podcast so much, though.
Aww. Depending on who that comes from, that could also be really creepy, but it's from you, so it's okay.
Yeah. You don't know me, but.
I would say, I don't know if you want to cut this out or not, but I've gotten some creepy messages from our fans out there, so it happens.
Anything's possible. Anything's possible. Well, so today I called you on board to resurrect one of my personal favorite segments of Fish Nerds, and that was when Dave and Clay would talk to you and you'd kind of focus on a specific fish for the conversation, and that was one of my highlights as far as listening to the podcast, and because we've all kind of shifted gears of what we're recording these days and how we're doing it. I love all your new stuff, but I was like, man, I really, really miss that. And Amazing James and I haven't really had a chance to record much these days because of his new position at work here. So I was trying to think of ways that I could kind of get back in the game. And I thought, you know what? How about I take over the role of talking to the good doctor about a fish of the day?
All right. We're bringing it back.
We are bringing it back.
I like it. And this is one of my favorite segments, too, because I just get a species and then I just find out things. It's like a puzzle, especially for the ones I've never heard of before. It's pretty great.
Great. Yeah, I think it's going to go well. But I guess we'll see at the end of this recording.
Maybe this will just be a one-time resurrection.
Clay might go, okay, that's okay, guys. Thanks.
It's too much geekery in one place.
Yeah. Well, let's get right to it, shall we?
Oh, certainly. So,
alrighty. So I threw out the first fish for you for our inaugural discussion, the cobia. Now that is a fish that has a lot of sentiment to me because even though it's a popular sports fish, it tastes delicious. It's a great fish to catch. That was a fish that I actually did a little research on back in college. I worked at a marine lab called Lumcon, and
where's that at?
I did some. It's in Cocodrie, Louisiana, which is right along the Gulf, south of my hometown of Houma. So it's about an hour and a half outside of New Orleans. And I was lucky enough to get a job there actually as a freshman in undergrad. So when I left college, I had 5 years of working in this lab under my belt, which was fantastic. But one of the projects I kind of got to do on my own was captive breeding of cobia. So we got to go out and catch them hook and line, which was awesome. And then we did like some hormone induced spawning stuff based on like the moon phases and whatnot. And it was really cool. They were always one of my favorite fish. So that's why I chose that, in case you were wondering, where did he pull cobia out of?
Well, I was wondering because I also know that you're currently in California. And even though these guys are very widely distributed in the warm tropic equator, they are not found on the Pacific coast of North America.
Not at all. I would guess maybe too cold.
I have no idea. I mean,
if I had to guess,
they have a pretty good. They have a pretty wide distribution. I'm not sure, I guess, what the temperature differences are. They look like they go plenty north of. Well, maybe not. I'm looking at their distribution map here. Maybe that is too far north for them.
Maybe so.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's because they're not here. Maybe I just sort of the longing, the lonely heart. Yeah, the lonely heart longs for the cobia. So
it's like your first love.
Yeah. So I thought I'd pull our first fish from just some of my favorites from back home in Louisiana. I mean, I go back there all the time, so it's definitely still home to me. So I love remembering all the cool fish that I grew up working with down there.
I actually got to go to Louisiana last summer. Oh gosh, was it last summer or the summer before that now? I don't remember. To the ASIH, American Society of Ichthyologists and Herpetologists meeting that I'm part of. And so I went down to New Orleans. They were there last year. And that
I remember
is also the 10th anniversary and the same conference in the same city where I met my PhD advisor. So,
oh yeah,
I think I told that story when I came back.
I think you did, yeah, because I remember Yeah, I remember seeing you were in New Orleans, and
Mhm.
I think I made a few suggestions of things that are fun to do there. That's cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. So, but that's
You were in
about my only.
Cobia Central.
Yeah, but I didn't get to go out on the ocean at all. I got to listen and watch PowerPoint presentations of all the cool stuff in the ocean instead. So it was very exciting. Lots of statistics.
Take our word for it. It's out there.
But,
Right on.
all right, so I have a
Well,
question for you.
Okay.
Can you pronounce the genus and species name of this fish? Because you're so familiar with it.
Okay, let's see.
I'm putting you on the spot.
Rachycentron canadum?
That's what I would have gone with. Yes, that's what I kind of assumed.
Okay.
I always like to do a little bit of etymology, so just like what word parts mean, because I think it's really fun. Also, the Greek/Latin taxonomic names tend to be really scary to people that don't get exposed to Greek and Latin every day, which I think is probably most people. So the Rachycentron, that's the genus name, that is from Greek, and it just means stinging spine. And so I bet since you have a lot of experience handling these guys, you probably know why they're called Rachycentron.
I'm guessing it has to do with a spine.
Well, it's a stinging spine, and from what I've gathered, since I've never handled these myself, is that their fins, maybe their dorsal fin especially, is incredibly pokey. Is that correct?
You know, it's when I was handling them, we were handling some kind of larger fish, and I guess it's kind of like when you handle a larger catfish, the spine sort of becomes less potent as far as a weapon the fish has. They get kind of bigger and dull, and I don't really recall ever coming close to being spined by large ones, but I would venture to say the smaller ones, just like a smaller catfish, is probably a little more
They get you.
Dangerous to handle. Yeah.
Very cool. And then, of course, Canadum, most people could probably figure that one out, is Canada. So, like the America's hat, that's just a little bit north of us. And that's just a type locality. So that's not necessarily very exciting. But
I do remember that was my that was one of the triggers to help me remember that in my undergrad fish class, when they'd lay out all the specimens for us and we had to write down the different names. I remember like Canada was always my trigger word when I'd see the cobia. It's a Canadian cobia.
Oh, there you go. CC.
Yeah.
That's what it is when you have to take the ichthyology class. You have to memorize all those scientific names and taxonomic classifications. Word games like that is what gets you through.
Now, in your research, did you happen to come across the other common name that this fish is called? Because I think a lot of people don't know what a cobia is based on that name.
So, I did come across a giant list of, I think, 30 different names that the cobia is called.
I guess if you have a wide distribution, it's probably got a ton of them.
Right. So I would bet, depending on wherever you are in the world, it probably has its own special name. And which one are you familiar with?
Well, the one I'm familiar with that probably a lot of the Fish Nerd Nation might know is lemonfish.
Oh, okay. The lemonfish.
That is a pretty common name where I'm from, and I've heard it on the East Coast a bit too. And I don't know for sure why, but I think because the meat kind of has a lemon yellow color to it.
Oh.
That would be my guess. Now that's just a guess.
Sure. Interesting.
But I'm very curious what else you're hearing these fish called.
Oh, well, I'm not hearing them called anything.
What's the word on the street?
Well, cobia is the proper one, and let's see if I can find my list of names. Give me 1 second here. Where is that? Nope, not that one.
I always thought cobia was the cooler sounding name.
Cobia. It's fun to say. Okay, all right. I got my list here. Cobia. Black kingfish, Oh,
yeah, kingfish.
and then
I
this
have
is
heard
the
that.
one I heard. So, like, they're really big aquaculture fish, which we can touch on in a second because there's some really cool research there. But
Okay.
since I guess cobia doesn't sound delicious, or lemonfish maybe doesn't sound delicious, they are sold as food fish labeled as black salmon. Which, of course, they are not black, nor are they salmon.
Nor are they salmon.
Like, not even close.
Yeah.
So
They do look really cool, though. I think one of the reasons I always liked them is when we see them, it's usually out on the rigs in the Gulf of Mexico, like fishing off the rigs. And they're so big and menacing looking. They're almost like they swim like a shark, but they look a lot like a remora, actually.
they do look
Sans
like
the suction
remora.
cup.
Yes. Yeah, they're really pretty fish. They got a nice big dorsal fin.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell. I think is their caudal fin, is it heterosursal or is it the same on both ends? Do they have a heterosursal tail? I doubt it since they're perciformes.
I think it's the same, but
Yeah.
I'd have to bring up a picture. It's been a while since I've just seen a nice, beautiful cobia.
Yeah,
But
I'm just looking at some of the photos that I grabbed off the internet, which of course we know we can
Oh, I
always
gotcha.
trust. So,
yeah, always.
but I
Always.
think it looks like the tail is the same at the top and bottom.
I
so.
think it is.
But yeah, they definitely
Yeah,
have that
they're,
flat shark kind of belly with the big dorsal fin. So I
Yeah.
could see where.
And
yeah.
their mouth is just like this. When they open their mouth to eat something, it's just like it's like a grouper or something. Just this suction that comes in, just and the food is just gone.
And they are predatory fish as well. So
Oh, yeah.
they eat lots of different fishes and crabs and squids and things, which is pretty cool. So when have you said you fished for them using a hook and line, yeah?
Yeah, hook and line was our method of catching the fish for research because we were going for brood stock, so we wanted some nice big fish.
So what kind of bait did you use?
A lot of squid and I think like sardine, that sort of thing.
So fishes and squids.
Although
yeah.
a lot of people use different artificial lures on them out on the rigs. I mean, it's a pretty fun, sought after fish in Louisiana for sure.
Very cool. And from what I read about their basic reproduction and growth and all of that, they tend to grow and mature relatively quickly. I think in like 2 or 3 years. And then they live for 10 to 13-ish years, depending on the sex of the individual, of course. So that's really good, which that's a good indication. Early age at maturity means they have lots of chances to reproduce. Those are some indicators that say, hey, this is probably a good fish for food and, sport and things like that. They're not really in danger of, going extinct or having any negative population problems. So that's good. Yay!
Yeah.
I think the last several of these fish nerd minutes I did, it was all just really depressing because it's like, yeah, population's in decline and you shouldn't do this and that.
Yeah.
So this one's actually kind of a fun one. It's got a really great aquaculture base already. That there's a ton of research out there on the aquaculture on not only, the best ways to raise these fish for consumption or whatever, but also to do it in a very sustainable way, which I thought was very cool. So I don't know if you said you have done aquaculture with these guys?
Well,
this would be a while ago, I suppose. Then.
We're talking, the late 90s, maybe 2000, 2001.
Mm-hmm.
So it's been a while, and I was pretty green then, and it was basically we were taking brood stock from the wild. We put them in these big round recirculating water systems, and when we hit the proper moon phase for when these fish normally aggregate and spawn, we would remove the fish, stick them in, knock them out with MS-222, and give him hormone injections to try and induce spawning.
Mm-hmm.
And we didn't do any larval grow out. So what I've done was pretty, just scratch the surface kind of stuff. So I'd love to hear some of the more interesting stuff you found about them.
Oh, sure. So just some basics with aquaculture with this specific species, not just aquaculture in general, although I would imagine there is definitely some overlap. But the very first reported aquaculture research on the cobia was in 1975. So I think Clay is always the one that says that I'm unusually young. So that was let's see, over a decade before I was born, without actually getting you guys to know how old I am. So I think they always try and get it out of me, but no one's really quite sure. So that's kind of fun. There's your Easter egg for those who want to try and figure it out. And then so that first one started in 1975 with just a collection of some wild caught cobia eggs off the coast of North Carolina, which is pretty cool. And the research paper itself just kind of described the larval development. It went on for about 130 days, and then it just stopped and said, "Hey, guess what? We grew these larval cobia, and they're good. Ta-da!" And so then it just kept going, and more research started cropping up in the 80s, kept going into the 90s. And I think the U.S. and China are kind of the very first countries that reported captive spawning of this species, which is pretty cool. So
yeah,
the U.S. and China are number ones.
Taiwan and China for sure. When we were kind of looking into other groups and their research, that definitely came up a lot. I remember.
So,
very cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. And the really cool thing, this is my fun fact on these guys.
Right.
It turns out, I don't know if this is unfortunate or not. I guess it depends on if you're an aquaculturist or not. But almost all of the research I could find on cobia was exclusively dealing with aquaculture, how to prevent diseases, how to prevent malnutrition, all this other stuff, how to make the meat taste better, basic care. So I'd say 99.9% of all the research published on cobia is directly related to aquaculture techniques. So my fun facts have to deal with aquaculture techniques. Woo!
All right, let's have some fun.
Sure. And so
with aquaculture techniques.
It's not going to be too techniquey, which is good. So one of the scientists, his last name is Watson, and he worked with some colleagues, and they have been working on a feed mixture for cobia that is entirely plant-derived, yet satisfies the nutritional requirements of cobia, which are predatory. So they're eating fish and squids, which is obviously not plant derived, right? Those are animals. So it was pretty cool. That came out in 2013. I couldn't find anything more recent that said if it really did work or not, or if this plant derived food is now widely used. I couldn't find that. So that would be, I think that'd be fun to know, but it's cool that they were developing it.
That's interesting. I know a lot of my, or at least a fair portion of my career has been in commercial aquaculture equipment or also aquaculture research, and that's always been sort of a big thing that they try and do is establish those non-fish meal feeds. I know we had at Hubs. I used to work at a Hubs SeaWorld Research Institute in San Diego, and we had a lot of guys come in that were interested in using soybean meal to replace, or at least partially replace, the fish meal that they were using in all the pellets they were feeding. So I wouldn't doubt that's probably the the big key to making aquaculture easy, cheap, and something that almost anybody can do,
and more sustainable, environmentally friendly. I think is another goal of that switch.
Oh yeah, I mean all the smaller fish that are caught just to make fish meal. I mean, it's unbelievable the amounts of fish that are taken just for that that purpose alone.
That'd be a whole other podcast.
Yeah.
Cool.
Right on.
Yeah, so I just a couple more fun facts, or just facts. I don't know. You can decide if they're fun or not, I guess.
The fun is up to
the
you.
fun is all it's in your hands. So the fans that are listening know how big these fish get. So
Ooh,
yeah, because they're not small.
No, they are not.
So if you can imagine, they're sexually maturing between 2 and 3 years old. They live up to 15 years. That's a decent aged fish, I think. Certainly not as long as like the Greenland shark, which has several hundred, but not everyone can be a rock star.
He's got a couple years on him.
Yeah, a couple. The average length that you find these guys, the cobia, in is about 3.5 feet long. But they can get almost twice that. They can get about 6.5 feet.
Oh,
So
yeah.
that's a lot taller than me. I'm not a tall person. And,
They are an impressive fish. When you find one of those large specimens, I'd love to. I've seen them from the boat in the clear water, but I'd love to actually hop in the water and do some snorkeling or something off a reef.
yeah, and
Maybe next time I do that.
well, that would be freaking great. And also, I'm going to be down, I think, around the Bahamas. I believe that they occur there.
Cool.
So I'm going to be going there in December. So maybe I'll get a chance to do some diving and snorkeling. I'm taking a class out there for a 2-week field biology course in the Bahamas.
Okay.
So I don't know if I'll have much time to actually do anything fun for me, but it's not all about me, I guess. So
I'm sure you'll make the best of the Bahamas.
gosh, I guess.
I guess.
over Christmas too, when it's nice and warm up in Kansas.
Yeah. Well, right on. Hopefully, hopefully you get a chance to see him, or maybe partake in a nice cobia steak or something.
Yeah.
They are definitely a delicious fish, and it, like you said, I didn't really think about it when I first selected the fish, but it is kind of refreshing to have a story where the fish has a lot of aquaculture potential and success already, but also in the wild, it's doing well. It's a great sport fish.
You don't have to feel like this horrible cloud of guilt over you for wanting to eat a fish.
Yeah, it's nice.
It is.
and then they're just freaking cool.
They are. They're so big. Like I wasn't sure. I didn't know how big they got, and so I just started looking at photos, and a lot of them, since it's aquaculture, they show like the larva, right? The little fry and juveniles. And I'm like, oh, those are cute little fish. Look at those guys. And then I was like, maximum length, 6.5 feet and 150 pounds. Holy cow, that's bigger than I am.
Yeah. And you can kind of see on some of the larger photos, you get a good look at those. I don't know for sure, but I'm guessing where they get that spine name from is above the dorsal. They kind of have this. You can kind of see this little row of spines right in front there, and a lot of the fish hold them down.
Yeah, I see them now.
So if you get the right image, and that's why I said like the handling them is never really a big deal, because they're not like a lot of like catfish kind of stick their spines out and lock them in.
Yes.
I don't really recall having that problem when I was handling them. And you can also see the bigger fish you kind of hold by the tail and under the belly, so it's not really a danger. But I would venture to say that is where the spine came from in their scientific name.
Oh, I have a question for you.
All right.
Do they have
my best.
Do they have teeth?
Not really. I mean, it's like your typical like fine teeth.
Okay.
It's more they inhale their prey, and anything big enough, just like a catfish, those teeth are just kind of there to hold them while they kind of reposition the fish and swallow it again.
Gotcha.
No like barracuda like teeth or anything like that.
And I do want to mention just briefly, since we're talking about a few different critters right now, catfish, that's a Siluriformes, that's the order, and then these guys are actually an order Perciformes, so they are in like the perch family. So not when Josh is saying, "Oh, it's like a catfish," da, 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 like, yes, it is like that, but it's totally different order of fishes. So just
a catfish.
Yes, not a catfish, but it's like
Teeth
that's
similar
close enough
to a catfish.
So I just like to be specific.
Yes, and that's the whole point of me targeting you for this segment.
Uh-oh, no pressure.
No, it's like, hey, like the back of your hand. You're like, by the way. Perciformes, guys, remember.
Perciformes. It's important. Taxonomy is important.
That's right. We got to keep the nerds in line.
That's right. No false identification on my watch.
Yeah, that's right. Well, yeah, that was interesting. It was nice to kind of refresh my memory a little bit about one of my favorite sport fish back home.
Yeah, we'll have to do this again sometime. Geek out.
I would love that. We'll talk to Clay if he gives us the thumbs up. Let's keep Fish of the Day going. I think it was a lot of people's favorite thing. It was a really interesting segment you used to do, and like I said, it was first on my list of things I wanted to record. Was bringing back this particular topic of a specific fish.
All right. Well, now it has been brought in. So, and I would give bonus points to any fan that can name the movie that I just quoted right there. But I'm not going to tell you. It's a secret. So,
and also, speaking of fans, if they do have specific fish they'd like to see on Fish of the Day, to please contact the Fish Nerds Facebook or whatever way they like to contact the Fish Nerds and say, hey, Doc Martin, how about you cover this favorite fish of mine?
We'll
see what we can do.
And if you, as in the fans, have any trouble finding me on the Facebook page, you can just call out to anybody that you know, and one of those people will be able to tag me so I can read your comment.
Definitely. Well, the good doctor, it was a pleasure talking to you.
Another fish in the bank.
Another fish in the bank.
Or on the bank.
All right. Well, enjoy your trip. And I look forward to discussing more Fish of the Day in the future.
All right. This was really fun. It was nice to finally have an actual conversation with Fish Guy Josh. Dun, dun, dun.
Same here.
Wow, thanks, Doc Martin and Fish Guy Josh. Fabulous stuff. Thank you for being part of the show. I learned more about cobia than I thought I ever wanted to know, and they are a really cool fish. Thank you. Cool. And now time for some Stump the Fish Nerds. If you want your fishy questions answered, call 607-378-FISH and leave us a voicemail. I'll be happy to play your voicemail on our show and answer your fishy questions. Now, this week's Stump the Fish Nerds is really great. But before I get to that, if you like our show, go to patreon.com/fishnerds and donate $1 per episode. Keeps the show going, helps us pay for all of our bandwidth and our swag and all the cool things. Patreon.com/fishnerds and donate $1 per episode, and I will be your bestest friend. Now here is Stump the Fish Nerds. Again, 607-378-FISH gets you into the Fish Nerds action.
Hi, Clay. This is Reed from Minnesota. I'm curious about hooking mortality and water depth. When you catch a fish from especially deep water, swim bladder will go popping out of their mouth. I've seen videos of people catching crappies and then blowing the swim bladder back into the fish and throwing it down the hole as if it's going to be able to swim back down to its previous depth and survive. have no idea. It seems hard to imagine that would work. I also wonder, at what depth does that become a problem? I generally ice fish in lakes that are about 20 feet or less. I never encounter this firsthand because I'm never fishing the fish that deep. But it kind of makes me shy away from doing any bottom fishing in extremely deep water. I know you're going out to the ocean and doing some reef fishing and bottom fishing sometime soon, and imagine that there's going to be some things that you catch that you don't want to keep. How do you handle it? At what point is it a problem? That's all I got for now.
Okay, Reed, thank you so much for your call. So the question is, what is it like for a fish when you release it after it's been caught in deep, deep water? All right, this is from, what I did was I checked out, State of New Jersey has a great resource on this. Excuse my cold here. And they actually have a forum called Down We Go, Effective Deep Water Catch and Release. I'll put a link up on our website for this document. But fish get what's called barotrauma. When fish are brought up from deep, deep waters, their stomach actually pokes out of their mouth. Most people think it's their air bladder, but it's not. It's their stomach. And just they're coming to pressure so different between the bottom and the top of the water. So it really kind of messes those fish up. Fish with barotrauma, they look like they're stiff, they're dead, their eyes maybe pop out of their heads. They get an enlarged air bladder, which results in the stomach being forced out through their esophagus. It's kind of gross and spooky and terrible looking. And when released, the fish can't get back down, so other fish will eat them. So what do we do about it? One approach, which I don't love, is venting. It's basically you poke a hole in the side of the fish and let the air vent out and throw it back in the water. Not great for the fish, as you can imagine. Being poked a hole through your body is not good for you. They do make a device called a descender. Use of this device, it's preferred to venting, and basically it's a weight that you hook to the fish, and you use that to bring the fish down to the bottom of the ocean or wherever you caught it from, allowing it time to like repressurize before you release it. It's like deep water releasing. According to the state of New Jersey, most fish resume normal activity soon after the underwater release. They also recommend you properly handle each fish, when you catch them, so you're not to keep them out of the water too long. You're doing all the good catch and release stuff. And they also point out that descenders are not commonly used on the East Coast, but they wish they were. They don't say it in those words, but you can kind of tell by the tone. So there's a few kinds of descenders. One of them looks like a lead weight with a hook, kind of a barbless hook in it. And you attach that to the fish, send it down, kind of shake the hook loose. The other one I really like is an inverted milk crate with weights on it. You put the fish in there, it basically brings that fish down really slow to the bottom, and you just lift the crate up with a rope afterwards. So there's kind of the two main kinds. The state of New Jersey also points out there's very little research on descending devices. I think I might follow up in the future episode and talk about this. I haven't seen any work with descenders in fresh water, but ice fishing in deep water, I've caught yellow perch, and I've had them have the same issue. So I can definitely see it working there. I might give it a shot this winter and report back. So like I said, you are right, Reed, to worry about those fish, and we should worry about them. I've seen lots of fish released that just kind of belly up and get eaten by seagulls. I'm going to give a descender a try next time I go out with Captain Sean and see how that works. Thanks for checking in. If you want to call Stump the Fish Nerds, call 607-378-FISH and leave us a voicemail.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
Okay, I'm here with Mike Volkovan. He's a press operator with the Duluth Tribune. Mike, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hey, and so, Mike, we're here to talk about this story that we saw come out last week or a few days ago about a girl who was bitten by a muskie. Duluth girl recovering from a scary encounter on Island Lake. This is the first I've ever heard about a kid being attacked by a giant muskie. What do you know about this?
I only know what we printed in the Duluth News Tribune.
Mm-hmm.
The story is that this girl was on a paddleboard, being towed by her father in a small boat, and her foot was dangling over the side of the paddleboard, and she was bit. And her dad heard her screaming, came around, picked her up off the board, and ended up having your foot pretty mauled up by what appears to be a muskie,
Yeah.
or can only be assumed that it is.
I saw the photos on there, and online we shared the story on the Fish Nerds group, which is why your name came up. And people were saying, "Oh, that's fake. It had to be the prop from the motor or something else." And then you chimed in, "Oh, I'm involved in this. I work for the paper. This is a for real thing." How does the paper determine something like this is a for real thing?
Well, I suppose in all actuality, I mean, I can't determine absolutely that it was real.
You're not a muskie bite expert.
Yeah, I'm not, in no way am I an expert on the situation.
Yeah.
It was a pretty shocking story, and it was on the front page of our paper. You know, as we're printing it, all the pressmen are looking around at each other, talking about it, and it was pretty apparent. I mean, I know the lake well. I know what's in there. People were talking that it was possibly an otter bite. There was an otter attack in that lake back in like 2012.
I'm never going to Duluth. I'm just telling you this right now.
But everybody that fishes big fish around here has been cut in one way or another.
Sure.
And you know how damaging those teeth can be. They're pretty aggressive fish and pretty. I mean, they're large and with big teeth, and it very much resembled what you would expect to happen if that story was legitimate.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. The cuts on her feet are unbelievable. They're so gross and deep. There's been some talk about a local lore out there, something called One-Eyed Jake. Is it possible One-Eyed Jake was what really attacked her?
Well, as the story goes, her grandfather was, as I understand it, started that story. Mm-hmm. And so, I mean, it's hard to think that a fish like that could be alive that long. Mm-hmm. But, you know, it definitely adds to an interesting aspect of the story for this family to have their own family lore about this giant muskie kind of following or predating on people of that family. And then this young girl actually does get bit. So it's hard to say, but it definitely makes for an interesting story.
Well, the way it's going to work for me is going to be from now on, any big fish that hurts me, I'm going to call One-Eyed Jake from now on. That's the new goal here when I'm fishing with kids. I'm like, look out for One-Eyed Jake. He's going to get you. Do you think this girl's going to want to go back in the water again?
You know, I was reading the story, and her dad seems to think that she'll be okay as far as that goes. I can't imagine she's going to be okay with it.
It's spooky, man. A freshwater system for that to happen. That is scary.
For sure.
Yeah.
I have a daughter myself, and so I was trying to compare how I would react and how she would feel about that. And the only conclusion I could come up with is to try to direct her in the way of becoming more of a muskie hunter.
Oh yeah,
I think that would be an awesome end of the story or whatever.
Right. The best ending would be to go out and catch One-Eyed Jake and then eat him and go like, screw you, Jake. Yeah. I've
got a buddy that owns and operates Dirty River Tackle out of Grand Portage, Minnesota, and he posted a post about, it was a joke, but posted a post about starting a GoFundMe account to go out and hunt this giant muskie because this offense can't be taken for lightly, and it was kind of turned into a jovial thing.
Oh, I'm in. I will give to that account. I would love to see this pike on a pike. Boom. That's my pike joke. But yeah, that's fantastic. So when you're working for the paper there, now it's not your job to determine what's real news and what's fake news and all that. But this one looks pretty legitimate, and the photos are very good. Now, I want to get your opinion on another news story out of Canada, and because you're a news expert. You're my only expert I have today.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but we'll go with that.
All right, and this is from the World News Daily Report out of Canada. Canadian fishermen survived sexual assault by dozens of seals. This is out of Tofino, BC. A British Columbian commercial fisherman claims he was held captive for 24 hours by a herd of seals after washing up on a small inhabited island during a violent storm off the coast of Vancouver Island. The man was violently thrown off the commercial fishing boat during a heavy storm, was lost at sea, and believed to be dead by Canadian Coast Guard officials. Pete McAllister eventually found his way onto a rock island populated by seagulls and dozens of seals. This is a quote. I was burned out, freezing cold and dehydrated. I saw the seals showing signs of aggression, so I played dead. And this is where it gets dirty. He says, my girlfriend keeps saying I was gang banged by a bunch of seals. I ain't no Christian, but that's my definition of hell. He told reporters laughingly amidst the tragic event. So he was aggressively molested by a bunch of seals during mating season. Do you think this is a for real thing?
I have no idea. That's an incredible story.
It's insane.
I would hope it's not real, but you never know about these things.
Right. Well,
animals can do some amazing things.
It's amazing, yeah. Well, the seal wraps up. Luckily enough, Pete McAllister was eventually rescued by a Canadian Coast Guard Search and Rescue Patrol 24 hours. He was found unharmed and is not likely to suffer from any permanent frostbite or injury. I think if you're molested by a group of seals, you are not, by definition, leaving the scene unharmed. What do you think about that?
I can't imagine being unharmed in that situation. I think I would be scarred for life.
Yeah. Now,
in several ways.
Well, here's the question: would you tell anybody?
Being me, yeah, probably.
Probably.
I would. I'm a big fan of stories and very open about getting stuff out there. So yeah, I would probably talk about it if it happened, but it would be an embarrassing encounter to say the least.
Yeah, I would tell everybody, and that way we can prevent it from happening to anybody else. You know, as a
Right.
Yeah, just choose to die in the ocean instead. Sounds terrible. Well, hey, that's all the time we have. But I'm thank you for coming on the show, and if there's ever any good news you want to share our way, just gonna drop it on our Facebook page, and be happy to share it out for you.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thank you for inviting me on your show.
News, fish in the news. Everybody loves their fish in the news.
Okay, that was some really good news, I guess. Now, here's some bonus content. This week, the Fish Nerds were on another podcast. The podcast is called The Twisted 10. You can find it anywhere you find podcasts. And The Twisted 10, every single week, has a new guest come on and give an original top 10 list. And this week, the Fish Nerds were the special guest. So I did top 10 fishy parents. We pulled this from a bunch of different things we've done in the past, but we like it. I say we, I mean I like it. And it was a lot of fun. So check out, here's a sample of the Twisted 10. Again, anywhere you find your podcasts, you can find the Twisted 10. And of course, we'll have links up in the show notes. I also should tell you, this is a rated R piece. And so if you are sensitive to bad language or sex talk, then you may want to skip this segment.
Number 8.
I was waiting for that. All right. This is called You Want Me to Put What Where? And this is about a blue-lined octopus. This is not a fish, but I like this one a lot. You're going to like this. So male blue-lined octopuses, these are little tiny, like 6-inch octopus. They have, one arm is shorter than the rest. And that arm is their sex arm. That's the only job of that arm is to make new octopuses.
Is it like the phalange? Is it
third leg?
Is that his actual, organ? Is that what that is?
No, it actually delivers a package. It's called a packet of sperm, a handful of sperm, basically, to the female. And in order to mate, he has to deliver that sperm under the mantle of the female and impregnate her in her oviducts, right? Am I teaching you about sex?
Yes, you
Yes.
are.
I learned so much from you.
So in order to pregnant, he has to do that. Now, they can't tell males from females. They all look the same until you measure that arm or until you try to implant a packet of sperm. So they often will grab other males and have a handful of sperm and shove it into the other male until they find out, oh, you're a dude.
Oh, that makes it really awkward the next day in the office. It's like,
Yeah, it's like, hey, sorry, Joe, I didn't mean to do that. And then when they activate with a female, females are not always receptive to males, just like any other animal. The males do all the trying to figure out how to get laid work. So these guys want it so bad. they will chew their own arm off while it has a packet of sperm. That arm will swim by itself to the female and climb under the mantle and deliver the packet of sperm.
You're right out of town. There's no way.
Yeah, it's totally real.
Yeah, octopus are one of the few animals, and correct me here if I'm wrong, Clay, because you're the expert, but octopus are one of the few animals in the world that actually have what could be the equivalent of brain cells throughout all of their appendages. So they could act independently. Now, it's not a full nervous system that is along with those arms or tentacles or whatever, but they do have brain activity as far as their ends of their arms, which is really cool.
What?
Yeah, you're totally right. And so that arm, that specific arm, job is to make babies. So it drives right into that mantle and delivers it over and over and over.
You know what this reminds me of? Did you ever see the movie Spaceballs?
I have, yeah.
You know, in the Spaceballs, John Candy's character was the man dog. What was his name? Barf?
Yeah,
Barf.
Yeah.
And they were in the bar, and his tail was going up the skirt of the waitress behind him. And he's like, "I'm sorry, it's got a mind of its own. See, this is the barf of the ocean. That's what this is."
Barf, yeah. Well, yeah. Perfect. All right, so that was the number 8. Number 7.
Number seven.
Siete. For Jay. That's for Jay.
Thank you. I wish Jay was here. All right. So this is titled "What Have You Done for Me Lately?"
What have you done for me lately?
What have you done for me lately?
It's Miss Jackson if you're nasty. Sorry, go ahead, Clay. Sorry.
And this is the anglerfish. This is those big fish.
those are awesome.
Little lantern on top of the fish. Now, here's a really cool thing. Female anglerfish have put up with deadbeat dads who literally attach themselves to the females to become parasites. So here's what happens. Here's how these fish mate. Female anglerfish are big, and the males are tiny, tiny animals. And they have one job as an adult, and that's to make babies. So these little animals are full of sperm. They find the female, and they bite her. And they don't let go ever again. And they become fused to her body, turning into gonads. And their job is stay attached to the female until she's ready to reproduce. And their job only deliver sperm when she's ready for her egg laying. So the males literally become fused to the female and become sperm generating machines to make more babies.
No shit.
That doesn't sound romantic at all.
Well, yeah, I tell you what, so you think about this, right? Like with animals and with most things in life, sex is a dangerous thing. You think about how many animals die to get laid. It must feel good to everybody because the amount of work it takes for an octopus or an anglerfish or even some spiders to make babies, they die doing it, or they get their heads eaten up by like other animals. It must be amazing to be worth all that effort. Because if it sucked, you wouldn't have animals.
I'm gonna have sex with an anglerfish female just to see.
The orgasm of a lifetime.
I'll do a whole report on it, and then.
Now, when the male angler, by the way, we've got lightning storms right here, so if we cut out, that's why.
Nice.
But the male anglerfish, when it attaches itself, is it still its own entity, or does it pretty much at that point have dependency on its host until it's ready, until the female's ready?
It fuses permanently and becomes a parasite. And so it will never let go.
So how does it get food? Or?
Well, a parasite would live off the blood system of the host.
Gotcha, but
that's right.
Is it connected like that?
It's connected mouth to ass, human centipede style.
I was just gonna say that. Feed. Yeah.
Now, what would be really bad is if one of those octopus arms suddenly thinks that male is a other octopus it needs to mate with, and then you'd have the full strength of the human centipede. In fish.
Oh, jeez.
Right?
We're talking about anglerfish.
Is that too far?
Right now.
Is that too far? Okay, that's too far.
That's too
Tack
much.
keeps me in check, Clay.
Yeah. Sometimes he goes off on these tangents that you just kind of smile and like, that's good.
You tried.
You tried, and that's what counts.
All right. So do you guys fish?
No, I do not. Sorry.
You don't. I don't think Andrea does.
I did
No.
when my dad was alive, back when I was a kid.
I did when I was a kid.
All right. When you were a kid fishing freshwater, what was the most common fish you caught?
Fish sticks.
Adorable.
Wait, freshwater?
Yeah.
I don't remember ever fishing in freshwater.
Well, most.
I grew up in Florida.
Yeah.
Catfish, I caught catfish.
They were gray.
Is that freshwater or is that saltwater?
That's saltwater.
Saltwater.
Well, I guess
right?
that's brackish too, isn't it?
Catfish are everywhere.
Yeah.
So, but the most common freshwater fish people fish for are little sunfish, little cute sunfish. They're everywhere. You got them in Florida. and they have different names everywhere you go. But our friend, the bluegill sunfish, one of our very common fish here in North America, has the award for the most understood spouse ever. And here's why. Sunfish are very territorial. The males, the bulls, the big tough ones, build these huge nests, right? They're big, they're called reds. They're big circles in the sand. They're like 24 inches across. Yeah, and they guard that like crazy. They don't let any other male come in. But females come on in, and they're like, oh, come on, baby, come on in here. And they'll have a harem of females. And their job is to like get those females' legs and spawn with them. But there are other males who want to mate with those females that are in that nesting area. And those are called sneaker males. And they want to sneak in and spawn with those females. To do so, they have to disguise themselves, right? This goes back to your old Bugs Bunny days, right?
Oh, no, wait. Is this Tu Wong Fu? Is that what's about to happen here?
Yeah, it's very bosom buddy.
It does sound very like Tijuana. Was this in Tijuana?
Yeah. So the sneaker males actually physically change their body color and their structure a little bit until they look just like female bluegills. And they swim up to the big bulls and they're like, hey, sweetheart, I'm going to come in. He's like, oh, come on, I'm going to have you in here. And they go in there and then they're like, hey, baby, it's just me. And the females are so impressed, they spawn with him and his genes get spread. And the big bull is sitting there going, I need more ladies. So he doesn't know that there's all kinds of orgy happening right behind him while those sneaker males are sneaking in. So bluegill, our most understood spouse.
So the females are impressed that the males acted like women.
Yeah, because they worked so hard to get in there.
Wow.
I think I would be successful then.
That's a ninja fish.
Yeah.
So Clay, I'm a fish. I haven't fished really in probably the last year and a half. However, I'm a big fisherman down here as well. Here in the intercoastal waterways, my favorite fish to catch down here is snook. That is by far my favorite. They put up a good fight. But when I was, I guess I was about 14. Maybe 15, down at my grandparents' place down in Vero Beach, right on the Intercoastal Waterway. I had the biggest fight on a fishing pole that I ever had, and it was in the Intercoastal. It was not a surf fish or deep sea or anything. I fought with this, whatever the hell was on the end of this line, for probably a good 2 hours. And for a 14, 15-year-old kid, that's a lot of time, especially on a rig that's probably less than $100. And my father came out, my grandfather came out, and I got this thing. I finally pulled this thing all the way up to the shore. And it's not like a joke or anything. It was actually a real animal, but it was about an 80-pound skate, or kind of similar to like a stingray or something. But it put up the biggest fight. And I was fishing on Sailor's Choice. So we would cast net, get some Sailor's Choice, hook them, and then send that out further. And sure thing, that it was a fun fight. It was bigger than the net that I had to lift it up out of the water. We cut it free. We couldn't eat it. We didn't know how to prepare anything like that. So we set that thing free.
Well, the fun thing about catching skates is they always feel bigger than they are because of their body shape. So they get sideways in the water and they're like a big kite and they're just catching. It's like a sailboat coming in the water and just dragging all that water behind them. So great fun. I love skates.
Absolutely. My kids, we've taken my kid, my son's 13, Andrea's daughter is 12, and we take them over to my folks' place over here in Merritt Island, and we let them fish with shrimp for a little while right off the dock. And 9 times out of 10, they don't catch anything for about 30 minutes. And with kids, even you said this on your last episode, you got to keep them entertained. Like when you took them out on that deep sea fishing expedition, you got to keep them busy. You know, kids watching a bobber is not going to keep them busy. So I had it ready here in the intercoastal down here. You chop up a hot dog, throw a sinker on it. Every single time you're going to catch a catfish. And sure enough, throw it down there. They're going to have fun. We throw them back. We don't count.
So that's it. You've listened to a whole bunch of fish nerds when you should have been doing anything else. Of course, I want to thank our families for letting us podcast and do all these nerdy things. And big thank you to Doc Martin and Fish Guy Josh for coming back to the show with their new segment, Fish of the Day. We look forward to all the future stuff they're going to bring us. Big thank you to the Twisted 10. And, of course, to Mike from Duluth for sharing the story with us. And so until next time, follow the code of the Fish Nerd, spawn early and often, avoid free lunches with strings attached, and swim against the current every chance you get. And this show, that's it. We're done. I'll talk to you next week.